Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm just waiting for Dave to arrive and check in, but wanted to just get things started here on time. I am looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to talk about first impressions of campers and parents and what we can do to make those better. So I will be watching the chat while I'm getting things set up here, and I am going to take your questions, give you some of the ideas that Beth and I implemented, that we've seen implemented in some of the other camps that we've been to, but really want to focus on what things are like at camp for first impressions. So I want to welcome you. Grateful you're all here. And those of you who are watching live, would love to take your questions. And those of you who are watching the recording, leave stuff down below and we will have a chance to maybe follow up this. Certainly got a lot of reactions to 2 weeks ago, Dave, when we talked about staff's first impressions. So today we're going to talk about camper and parents' first impressions.
Yeah, great. It's a great topic. Excited to jump into it.
On. I'm going to just double check in and make sure everything's looks like it's working on Facebook. So I'm going to double check that. But I wonder if you would mind, while I do that, just give folks kind of an overview of your thinking or your philosophy of opening day, arrival day, whatever each camp calls it, that first moment of a Monday when day campers arrive. What sort of things you're thinking about?
Well, I'd be happy to. I think for starters, we as camp people, we're programmers, right? So in essence, event planners. And I'd like to think of check-in day or opening day as an event. So we need to put the attention and detail in it that we would for planning any special event, and really make sure that we're going about it with a program mindset, right? And understand that mom and dad, especially first-time parents who are dropping their kids off for the first time, can be anxious. Heck, I remember taking my sons when they started going to camp, and even my daughter years later when she started going to camp. I was the camp director. We lived there, and there's still a little bit of anxiety about taking your kid to camp. And so you need to understand that, especially for new folks coming in, that there's a level of anxiety that mom and dad, they're excited and they're happy and they're obviously on board, but most parents are carrying some level of anxiety with them. And so that first impression that you make will really help ease some of that, or it will make that grow into more anxiety. And my philosophy has always been treat it as a program, as a special event, put in all the work to make sure that not only that it runs smooth, but also that everything that they see is about making them feel more comfortable with the decision that they made to entrust you with their children. And so that means some of the physical things, like, we would always mow camp at the end of the week. So it was, and do all of our weed whacking at the end of the week. So the camp was freshly mowed and looked good when people came into camp. And that's an impression. You come to drop your kids off and the camp isn't mowed and there's weeds growing up next to the building. The first impression is, boy, they can't even take care of their facility. How are they going to take care of my kid, right? And as camp people, sometimes we can overlook that and say, oh, well, things aren't mowed, it's just grass, so we're more interested in spending time with your kids. But that's not how an anxious parent feels. And other physical things, I honestly think, Travis, that one of the most important things that you can do is make sure that whatever bathroom, it should be all your bathrooms, but especially whatever bathroom mom and dad have access to, needs to be clean. And it needs to not only look clean, but it needs to smell clean. And you need to have somebody checking it throughout the day to make sure that it remains that way. And it's those kind of details. We can talk more about those as we go on, but those kind of details physically. Then I also think there's an emotional thing you need to do to prepare people for. And part of that is just making it easy and comfortable for them. And so we're going to share some thoughts on that. But when you would pull into to our last camp, you'd come down a big hill. When at the top of the hill, there was a sign that would give you directions to tune into our radio station, and that radio station would be on repeat, talking you through how check-in looks and what it looks like. And of course, they received all this information in advance, so they knew what it looked like. But then they'd get to the bottom of the hill where camp entrance was, and there'd be a staff person there who was standing, not sitting. They were standing and in their uniform and waving and greeting cars as they came in and directing them to the next person, which was down the road that they could see. And that person would do the same and then direct them to where to park. And there'd be people there to help parking. And then we would have staff meet them before they came in the building for registration. And here's one of my secrets. I was going to share this later, but I'll share it right now. And when campers became staff, they were always a little heartbroken to hear this. But we had, for my entire career, I would have a new staff. It was important it was a new staff because they have an excuse to not know people.
Yeah.
I would have a new staff member meet the kids outside right where their cars were parked before they came in, and ask for their name and write a name tag for them, just a simple name tag that we'd put on their chest. And then ask them if this was their first year. And if it was their first year, they would write their name in a red marker. And if it was not their first year, they would write their name in a black marker.
Yeah.
So then they would come in the building. There would be somebody greeting them at the door. We called that the super happy fun person. And that was a staff who was just warm and welcoming and kind. And they would direct them to check in. And the first person they would meet and check in would be myself and our summer camp director.
Yep.
And if they had a black name tag on or black name, I would start with saying, "Hey, Travis, welcome back. Great to see you again. How's your school year been?" And they were always so moved that we knew them and remembered them. And if they came in with a red one on, I'd say, "I don't recognize your face. You must be new this year." And let me introduce myself. And then I think the last part, so there's a physical first impression. I think there's that emotional first impression. And then I think I don't know what to call it other than maybe just a organizational first impression. But once they're there and they're going through whatever your process looks like, that process needs to be as short and organized and easy as possible. Standing and waiting in line is hard to do. It's brutal. And, if you have them showing up and doing their paperwork and doing all kinds of stuff, that's not where mom and dad's head is at. We want to have that stuff ready so that it's a quick and painless process, and just blow them away with how organized and well ran we are, so they feel good about it.
Yeah.
So those are kind of my three things.
Cool. I want to pick up on a couple of things and share some experiences things I've observed or experienced. One, that act of the camp director knowing your name as a kid had an incredible impact on me. I remember going back to camp after just a couple of years, and I went to a 1-week session camp. So I was at camp 1 week of the whole year. But when my camp director, Bob Ferris, remembered my name and welcomed me back, we didn't have the name tag trick, which I love. Any tools for names. I think after one of my full joking philosophies is that like marshmallows, everybody has a finite number of names that they can absorb in their lifetime. Running camp, I ran out of room for names a long time ago, so I have to kind of physically force out names to bring new names in. So I love a good name trick. It's something that I know is not one of my strengths, but I think that's awesome. The other thing for first impressions and just moving people through, something that I saw on a camp visit, I love to go and try to schedule camp visits to include that opening day drop-off day when I'm doing an evaluation or helping out the camp directors make some decisions about how their camp is perceived, et cetera. One of the most interesting things I saw in a typical old camp dining hall on opening day was that staff had brought in the big box fans and turned them on themselves and not on the parents who had been waiting in line.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like, these are the kind of things we have to look for constantly. That there are a bunch of hot parents who are standing, you're sitting and going through stuff on your laptop and doing all the check-in procedures as you need, but we need to make sure that we're being welcoming to folks as our guests and conscious of those. But those IDA details, exactly like you said, one of the things I was going to say is we never on ever period, but especially on these welcoming and opening days, never want to look sloppy. Because if our procedures look sloppy, our site looks sloppy, our staff uniforms look sloppy, all of those are a bit of a lesson to parents. Like if they're sloppy about these things, which are small details and easy to fix, how are they going to be sloppy with my child? And I definitely think it's worth having someone from outside your organization come and watch an opening day with the stated goal of help us find places where we can do better. And yeah, and just make sure that you are thinking about that coordinated opening day.
One of the things that there was an interesting progression through my career was when I started in camping. Kate and I were married, but we didn't have any kids. And I would, quite honestly, I would get very frustrated when somebody else in camping would say, or a parent would say, well, you don't understand, you don't have kids. And I'd be like, I've got 1,000 kids every summer.
Yeah.
Of course I understand. And I would get offended by that. But then as I grew in my career and family came along, one of the things it's not fair to expect somebody to really understand until you have kids, but is that level of anxiety that you have of dropping your kids off someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you haven't done a good job of building a relationship with those parents, there's a level of anxiety that goes along with it.
Yep.
And I think, and so what I started to realize is that, parents they're looking for, whether they're doing it subconsciously or they're going through a checklist, they are evaluating whether or not they feel comfortable dropping their kid off. And what we need to be doing is understand that it's our responsibility to help them feel comfortable dropping their kid off. And so let's make everything look so that we can show them that we are going to pay attention to detail. We are going to do things right. Your kid is safe here with us. We're organized, we're clean, we're a safe place to be. And that mentality really grew as my kids grew and started attending camp. I started looking at it through a little bit of a different eye. And so that's an important message that I've tried to share. I really think that check-in day, or the whole process of check-in, needs to start weeks before, or even potentially months before that actual day starts, by communicating to get paperwork done and complete so that we don't have to do it ahead of time, by receiving a nice communication from the camp director welcoming them to camp, by connecting with that family in any way you can so that there's already a relationship and some established communication and trust in place before they ever go on to camp for day one.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Joanna Warren Smith, I've heard her speak about, she's done a lot more on-site visits than I've had her at, that I have. And she's been pretty gracious to share those with the camp community. And one story I've heard her tell a number of times is her being at a camp for her site evaluation and program evaluation to report to the camp director. She is there on opening day, and we'll have a notepad out. She's taking notes as she sees things. And she has had a parent or a set of parents come up to her and say, we're leaving with our child, based on stuff that they saw there. They assumed because she had a notepad out, she was part of staff. She wasn't in uniform, but they just said to her on the way out, we can't believe how this is run. We're leaving with our child.
Yeah,
And I definitely know of other camp directors who've had that happen before.
yeah, and that doesn't, that's sad because that kid misses out on that experience, and
Yep.
and I've always felt that as camps, especially in a community like in your state or the community that you serve, if a kid goes and has a poor experience at one camp, the likelihood of them attending another camp is
Yeah.
slim. I think that we're better when we're all better, right?
Yeah.
And so that's always disappointing to hear, but I don't think it's that uncommon, really.
No. One of the other sort of philosophy of this drop-off day that that I thought of when I was prepping for this call is, I think it's an important philosophy of running camp, but it really comes into play in this day in general, that if you, some organizations will have more chance to change this in a summer. If you have a week-long session, you might get 8 or 9 chances to improve your opening day. If you are, longer sessions and you have 2 opening days or drop-off days, some of those camps will have, drop-off be at an airport, so those kids have to fly to different things. But the drop-off has to be carefully considered and then improved every single time. I think it's important that every staff member is trained to be thinking, how can I make this go faster for families? How can I make us look better? How can I make our preparation for this day go faster? When we ran camp, we were 6-day sessions, 24 hours off for our staff. They'd come back, we'd get the site ready and have a meeting, and then parents would come in. And one of the things that I would be doing now if I was running a camp in that same style is I would be working to make sure, like cutting the grass on Friday, making sure that as much was done as possible so that the site was easy to get ready to open for parents. Because even though we would say, and we changed this over time, we used to have a drop-off window from 2 to 4, and we over time shortened that to 1 hour. It meant that it was harder to move cars around sometimes, but it meant that the early arrivers and the late arrivers were a lot less. They were compacted into this time. But that sometimes meant that we were finishing up a staff meeting at 2 o'clock, opening, letting people register their kids at 3, and we'd have parents arriving at 1:30. So there was no time after the meeting to be ready. We had to be completely ready, including a sign that said, as we said in your package, registration opens at 3. Feel free to wander around, have a drink or cookie and do that. But all of those things are important. And the piece I really want to get across is that I think every staff should be trained to say, how can we save families time and make this experience better for them? And expect it. Like that should be something Monday morning staff meeting or Sunday night staff meeting that says, what changes can we make? And even if we give them little goals, I talk a lot about running a lean camp organization, which really involves looking for waste at camp, including wasted time of parents, and that everybody is responsible for finding 2 seconds that they could shave off everybody's experience every day. And when you have 50 or 70 people who are trying to shave 2 seconds off that opening day experience, every time it happens, then you just constant improvement and make it go better. And one other thing I would lean on for that is make sure brand new staff, no matter how young they are empowered, encouraged, and made to feel responsible for saying the things that they see because they're new. Asking why we do it this way should be their responsibility, because that allows you to have that outsider, fresh take on things. That's like, why do we always do it this way? I don't understand. Maybe there's a reason, but at least you get people to accept being challenged the way things have always been.
I apologize for my doorbell going off there, but
No
that
problem.
was, I think that's all great. And I've got two things to add to that. One is that I think it's important that you practice check-in,
Yeah,
and we
100%.
that's something I think a lot of camps you just assume that everybody, but you need to practice it. And so we would get set up, and we would go through with pretending to be a parent and um, check in and go through everything from parking through the check-in process, through medications to all of that. You need to practice it so that it is not something you've just gone through once or twice, but the
Hmm.
people who are involved in that process are efficient at it, and efficient at it to the point that they can do it and do it well and do it quick, but also do it and being able to interact and be friendly
Yeah,
and welcoming to that family.
yeah.
The other thing is arrival at the cabin. So
Hmm.
our camp, you would check in one building, and then you would take your child and go check in physically at the cabin and get their bunk set up and get them ready to roll. And I think that first cabin experience, walking up and greeting or being greeted by the staff in that cabin, and what that staff looks or what that cabin looks like and smells like,
Hmm.
and how are they greeting, teaching your kids or your staff to get down on a knee to greet the
Yes.
little kids
Yep.
and to greet them at their level. And we'd even go as far as how to appropriately shake a hand, and as silly as that sounds, the limp fish handshake
Oh,
is something that doesn't sit well with some parents. And how do you shake a hand, and how do you make mom and dad feel comfortable in that first conversation, and make the kid feel comfortable, and get them in and moved in. And it's one thing if you're the first or second child to show up, but if you are the seventh or eighth, what are the
yep.
other kids doing? Mom and dad are going to see what the other kids are doing when they come to drop their kid off. And are they engaged in something, and are they engaged in greeting the other kids when they come? And so that whole cabin group is warm and welcoming.
Yeah,
Or are they swinging from the rafters like a wild gang?
yeah, yeah.
Um, I think those are the details
Hmm.
that really matter. But
Yeah.
warm days, having cold lemonade and
Hmm.
cold water available for people. I just think people need to really take the time and think through all those little details. It's a customer service thing, and
Yep.
so many opportunities to make a great first impression.
Yeah, yeah. And I think along with that practice, it was what we did was we gave certain senior leadership team members certain jobs in this, and then other people, and then cabin staff had their stuff, and we would have a few senior staff available to walk kids to their cabin if one of the cabin counselors wasn't there to do it. So there's all sorts of different roles, and a lot of that came from all of these changes and practices. Like, hey, people get stuck here at this point. Let's put somebody there so we can help them. Like, they don't know whether they at the fork in the road. They don't know if they go right or left, and or that they can do both. If the left side's busy, they can go to the right. Like all those things. But one of the things we realized is that we need to train staff on 2 or 3 or 4 positions in that day. And so that in case of an emergency, an opening day, that could happen. That happened to us once when we were directing, where Beth was in bed with a migraine during opening. So someone was able to take over her job, which was to be the first person the parents saw when they drove in on the road. The first greeter was the camp director. And then my job was to be available to float around and ask questions. Beth was in bed with a migraine. I was a volunteer firefighter, and I got called away on a medical emergency that I couldn't not go to. Usually an opening day, there would be enough firefighters around to handle things that I wouldn't have to go, but this was a medical emergency that I had the best skills in our department. So I had to go to this. And so we had enough forethought to train everybody to do these different jobs, because I pulled out of the mix, someone else just stepped in, and everybody just fell into place behind because we had rehearsed it and we knew what was going to happen and had prepared for those things.
Yeah, and I really think that's key. You don't know who's going to be sick or or
Yep.
even if one area is falling behind, getting
Yeah.
busy, to be able to shift somebody over to be able to help them get caught up is
Yep.
key.
Yep.
And I loved what you said earlier about getting set up. We would try to set up the night before for check-ins. So everything was in place. And that just makes it so much easier to not feel like if you start out the day rushed on check-in day,
Yeah.
then you feel like you're never quite caught up.
Yeah, totally. One other thing that I thought of that we were very intentional about is that, and this is just partly the way my brain works, but we accepted and acted as if this opening and drop-off day was marketing for us. So, marketing for us is how we greet parents. It's how we talk to grandparents. It's the kind of conversations we had with them. Since then, I've developed a few tools just for young adults to have some conversational tools to talk to parents and grandparents, and to think about ways that they do that. But specifically, opening day is marketing for the future campers in that family. And if you have a system where an arriving camper is greeted, handed off to their counselor, the counselor engages them, etc., but a parent has to go wait in a line, then the other 3 siblings who are there from that family, they're just waiting around bored in line and hot. That's a missed opportunity for us. So we would have activities that we could, inside of parents, that we could have staff members say, hey, do you guys want to come over here and color? Do you want to build Lego? And give those kids something, even go so far as to give those kids the same name tags that other campers got. We got name tags later in the process than you did, but just to give those kids a name tag so they felt like they belonged at camp. And the staff were asked to say, when the parents said, okay, we're going to head out to the cabin and check out and say goodbye, they're reminded to say to those campers, can't wait till you're here as a camper. And sometimes those little things, that sticks in kids' heads and gives them such a great first impression of camp that it'll help make that decision for them.
Yeah, I love the idea of having stuff for the little siblings, younger siblings to do. That's an idea. We didn't do that, but boy, it sure would be a simple thing to do that shows caring and good customer service and interact. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah.
One of the things that we did, I feel like we're just kind of throwing stuff out here, trying
to
share ideas as we can.
We got a couple minutes left, so let's give them some good ideas.
So I was always very intentional about the color of shirt that we would wear on check-in day, knowing that a lot of the staff were going to be outside the whole day, and also knowing that I wanted the staff to stand out. And so to pick a black or a dark colored shirt there's something about that where the heat the staff just get cooked in those, which then means that they're sweaty and they're uncomfortable. It's not a safe thing for them.
Yeah.
But it's also an appearance thing. They get sweaty and wet and just aren't as inviting looking. So we would try to find colors that would reflect light more and be a little more comfortable to wear on a hot, sunny day. But we also try to pick colors that you could identify and would stand out. And so our goal was, from the minute a parent pulled on the camp until they pulled off of camp, I don't want them to be anywhere where they couldn't see a staff shirt. So anywhere they were through that whole process, we had people positioned throughout camp so that you literally could not make your way through camp without seeing a staff shirt. Yep. And so if you had a question or you got lost or you got confused, you just had to look around and you could see there's somebody I can go and ask a question to.
Right. Yeah, staff uniforms, incredibly important. It's also, this is just a pet peeve of mine, but I don't like t-shirts as uniforms. They're great, they're cheap, you can get them in good colors, you can do all of those things, but I like staff to have a collar on their first day. And I think you have to pick something that suits or is available at different body sizes and shapes that works for that, and have a couple of different options maybe. But I definitely like a shirt with a collar on it instead of just a, you know, clean bright orange t-shirt. It's a little thing, and I think my 17-year-old self would hate me for saying it, but as a director, I like to think that's important.
I 100% agree. We always had, so we eventually moved to the point where staff wore a uniform every day of the week.
Right.
We provided t-shirts for the weekdays, but on check-in day, there was always a collar. Just looked a little bit more professional, a little bit better first impression. Maybe we're old school that way, but I think it is more professional.
Yeah. The other thing we did is we took all of the uniforms in. Again, we would have opening day Sunday, closing day Saturday. We took all of the uniforms in during the week and laundered them so that we knew that they were hanging. You know, they weren't in a bottom of a duffel bag or stuffed in the back of a milk crate. And they were in good shape. We just hand them out. Like at the end of closing day, we're like, everybody give us your shirts. We'll hang them up for tomorrow. They'll get, you know, sort of aired out and dried out or whatever, and we'll put a little spritz on them, and then tomorrow just give it to us at the end of the day and we'll launder them in, just so we know. Cool. Well, this is really fun. I saw that we've had 4 or 5 people watching. I suspect as we're getting closer to the summer, there's less time to drop in on things like this, but I'm grateful for your time and your insight, Dave. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I enjoy these. They're a lot of fun, and I hope that people are getting some little tidbits that they can put into place. I think we've got one more coming up on the 2nd.
Yes, that's right. Last one of the season will be 2 weeks from now.
And if anybody needs any help, feel free to reach out to either of us. We're here to help and support in any way we can.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Dave.
Yep. Thank you, Travis. Have a good one.
Take care.